and I would like to call our meeting to order. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'd like to acknowledge that we are within the territory of the Sechelf First Nation. I'd like to pass on regrets from Director Julius. He was unable to be here with us today. And we're going to move on to adoption of the agenda. We do have a slightly amended agenda from, we have some items that came forward from our Planning and Community Development Committee that we had earlier this morning. And then we also have a report from, a late report from our Senior Manager of Admin and Legislative Services. So if I may have a motion to accept the amended agenda, please. So moved, seconded, and Director Ties.
Yes, I'd like to add another agenda item to new business, please.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a name for that item?
Yeah, let's call it motion regarding Clack Creek.
Okay, thank you. So may I have a seconder to accept that amendment to the agenda? Seconded. Are there any other items? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amended agenda? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have an amended agenda ahead of us, including the new business regarding Clack Creek. Any other items to add in? Seeing none, I'll call. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to minutes of our regular board meeting of November 22nd. May I have a motion to accept? So moved. Seconded. Thank you. Any errors, omissions, additions to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. No business arising from minutes or unfinished business from last time. We have no presentations or delegations today. So we will move on to our reports. What I think we'll do with our reports is we'll go through them one by one. So we're going to start with our Corporate and Admin Services Committee recommendations, numbers 1 through 7 and 9 to 12 of November 22nd, 2018. Before we move the full package, are there any of those that any of the directors would like to pull out for more conversation on at this table? Okay. See none? Okay, so I took a couple of days off and now I'm a little process behind, I feel. So please correct me if I'm behind on anything. Okay, thank you. Okay, so move receipt of a report of November 22nd, please. So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. And the recommendations that are within those, move receipt or move adoption. Thank you. Move adoption of all the recommendations, please. Moved and seconded. Wow, I'm really off my game today. Thank you. Any further discussion on any of the recommendations on that first report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda, Special Corporate and Admin Services Committee Pre-Budget Committee recommendations, number 1 to 14. First off, we'll move receipt of report, please. So moved and seconded. Thank you. Does anybody want to move or pull out any of those recommendations to discuss before adoption? Or, pardon me, before we accept? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the report? Thank you. And moving adoption of the recommendations. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Special Corporate and Admin Services Committee Pre-Budget Recommendations number 1 to 23 of November 30th, 2018. Moved receipt of report, please. So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. And do we want to pull out any of those recommendations before we move them all as a whole? Okay, so seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the recommendations? So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I understand it was a very long meeting, and Director Ties did a fantastic job, so thank you. I know it was and alternate director Toth as well. They had it went very well. Okay, that's enough discussion. I'm going to close it off right there. Okay, and I'll call the question. All those in favor of adoption of those recommendations? Thank you. So we have 5A, which is Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations number 3 and 7. First off, may I move receipt of those, please? So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. And a motion to accept those recommendations, or would we like discussion on them first? You'll move receipt and move adoption and a seconder. Thank you. Prior to adopting, was there any further discussion? We had a very fulsome discussion earlier today on recommendations number 3 and 7 in amongst a very large agenda package. So we've had a fulsome discussion earlier today, but if any of the directors wanted to say anything else before we call the question on adoption. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, our Senior Manager of Admin and Legislative Services 2019 Board Appointments on Annex E, pages 20 to 22. I will we'll go over to staff if for our corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So this is a routine report that comes forward on an annual basis to allow the board to make appointments to various advisory committees and liaisons to different committees in the community. And so with your assistance, some suggestions have been put forward for the board's consideration and endorsement. And I'll just draw to your attention that there is one position listed at the end of the report as a liaison to the Gibsons Chamber, where at this point a name has not been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is one thing that we had brought up, and I'd like to thank Director McMahon. She has volunteered to be that liaison position, so we'll make that as an amendment to this report. So we'll add that on and then accept the report as amended. If that's procedurally, that should be fine. Yeah. Okay, so Director McMahon will be the liaison to the Gibsons Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Okay. So to the board, may I have a motion to accept the committee appointments as amended? Oh, sorry. Oh, right.
I'll move receipt of the report and the list of board appointments as amended and adopted.
Thank you very much, Director Seegers. And may I have a seconder? Director McMahon, thank you. Any other discussion on the motions on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have another report, a late item 6A, the round 1 budget meeting schedule changes. So I'd like, can we please receive this report, and then we'll move to the second round of the recommendation after we've discussed this. So move receipt and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. And over to staff, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So in the course of reviewing our upcoming meeting schedule and agendas, we've identified that there are some key pieces of information that would help inform decision-making during the budget deliberations, such as rate reviews, the impacts of the Transit Annual Operating Agreement, and things like that. And so staff are recommending that the round 1 budget meetings, or the Special Corporate and Administrative Services Committee meetings that were originally scheduled for the end of January, be rescheduled to February 4th and 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the directors, do you have any questions regarding those dates? I know one of our directors is going to be away during that time. I'm hopeful those dates will still work for you. Are there any other questions regarding? Oh, yes, Director Hiltz.
The calendar had 3 days and we're 2 days?
Over to staff.
4th and 5th. So that's Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, so when we set the original calendar date, thank you, the number of budget proposals that we are looking at has been refined, and we have a better understanding of what's coming forward, and staff are optimistic that it can be taken care of in 2 days.
Thank you. Directors, any further questions? Any other questions? No? Okay. So our second recommendation, that the Special Corporate and Admin Services Committee Round 1 budget meetings be rescheduled to February 4th and 5th, 2019. May I have a mover, please? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carries. Next on our agenda, we have communications. We have two letters from other government agencies, from the Honourable Selena Robinson and Gordon Ruth, the Auditor General for Local Government. May I have a motion to receive, please? So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Any questions or comments on the communications that we have in front of us, either one of those two letters? Okay, seeing none, did I say all in favor? Yeah, okay, good. All right, excellent. So thank you. Next we have motions. So motion number 9, that the resignations of Laura Houle and Maura Laverty from the West Howe Sound Area F Advisory Planning Commission be received. May I have a mover? So moved, Director Hiltz. Seconded, Director Ties. Any discussion on the motion? Director Hiltz.
Just like to thank them for their work on the Advisory Planning Commission. It's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure what's the procedure. Are they given a over to staff? Are they given a thank you or for?
Thank
if
you,
you
Chair
can explain
Pratt.
that.
Yes, a letter will be sent to thank them for their service.
Thank you. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Thank you. Notice of motion, number 10 here on our list. District Lot 1313, Director McMahon. I'm going to read the motion, and then we'll go through the process beyond that. So the notice of motion coming from Director McMahon is that the SCRD board write immediately to the Premier and Cabinet requesting an immediate Cabinet order be issued pursuant to Section 7 of the Environment and Land Use Act to suspend the pending auction of timber sale license A91376 on January 1st, 2019, in order to protect the property from any changes until the Regional District determines policy for properties in the urban/rural interface on the Lower Sunshine Coast, and that the Chair be directed to contact by phone the Honourable Doug Donaldson, Minister of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, Flinrod, to advise him of the letter, provide him with an overview of the situation, and to ask him to intervene on the side of caution to postpone the January 1st, 2019 auction to provide the SCRD with time to formulate policy, and further that the Chair be directed to report the results of the conversation to the rest of the board before the start of the 2018 December holiday break. I'll look to Director McMahon to move that, and seconded by Director Hiltz, and Director McMahon, I'll allow you to open for debate.
Thank you. As we heard this morning, we had a communication from our MLA's office saying that logging would be deferred, but we haven't got that in writing. And until we have that in writing from the ministry, I think we need to move forward with this action. I'm just going to talk a little because I get to. So I am concerned about other logging on the coast as well as 1313, such as Clack Creek. But I did want to point out that there are some unique concerns about Block 1313. It was designated as a community watershed as far back as the 1940s and is in the Gibson's Aquifer Recharge Zone. It is surveyed land which is not in the BC Timber Supply Area, and so it was never designated for logging. And it is directly adjacent to residential properties. The owners of those properties are afraid that they will lose their homes, bought with their life savings, to floodings or debris flows from logging. They have everything on the line here. And they have every right to be concerned. I previously knew that we had a lot of stormwater problems in this area, but I have been shocked by the number of phone calls and emails I'm receiving from residents who are struggling with flooding on their properties. And this problem is only going to get worse with climate change. As we all know, there's a flooding advisory in effect right now, warning of high stream flows today. Roads and properties are flooding because we did not design our communities to be part of this rainforest and to work with natural processes instead of trying to stop them or control them. But we have a lot more knowledge now, and we can and must make our neighborhoods more resilient. I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. We are facing catastrophic climate change. Business as usual is no longer an option. We must do better.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I'll look to the rest of the board for any other comments to the motion on the floor. Thank you for drafting this motion and giving very clear board direction. As Director McMahon mentioned, we have a verbal assurance. However, we haven't seen it in writing, so this is why we're continuing forward, or this is why the motion is still on the agenda for today. And based on the board's decision, we'll be giving the chair direction on what to do next. So I'll put the motion to the. Director Seegers, please.
Thank you. In conversation this morning around the table, there was indication that rather than contacting the minister by phone, it would actually be a meeting in person. Which direction are we looking at supporting the chair in proceeding?
It's a good question. Director Theis?
It sounded this morning that you would be meeting early next year, and since the auction is slated for January 1st, I would think that we would need to contact the minister before that, not in person. So maybe we try to get him on the phone and then have an in-person meeting in the next year.
I'll reiterate what I said to the MLA. I will go to wherever the minister is to find, even if it's a road trip. We'll do it because this is a very important issue to our community, and the community's been very clear on it. We need to have this dealt with. Director Beamish, please.
Chair, thank you. I would like to suggest that Director McMahon, who knows a great deal on this issue, be invited to join you on that trip for the minister and represent the interests of Area E on that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point. Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to see no other questions to the motion on the floor. I'm going to, Go ahead.
If that, given our conversation at noon, we would need to have that included in this motion, however you'd like that worded.
In regards to spending of board, resources, we would need to just have that spelled out in the recommendation.
I would make that recommendation that Director McMahon be authorized to accompany the chair to meet with the minister once the meeting is arranged. Thank you.
And a seconder for that? Okay, seconded. All those in favor of the amendment to the motion? Thank you. Motion carry, or the amended motion, or the amendment to the motion carries. I seem to have lost my Robert's rules somewhere overnight. Okay, so we have an amended motion on the floor that Director McMahon will join the chair in meeting with the minister. Is there any further discussion to this amended motion on the floor? Yes, Director Lamb.
So I have not walked this piece of property, this area. I've done a lot of walking in the forest, and I enjoy what Mother Nature has given us here in this community. This is a huge balance. Like I support this motion, but it's a huge balance as to how you move forward, because forestry, logging, harvest has been a huge part of our community, and it's an ongoing a huge economic driver in our community, which gives us a lifestyle and our way of life. So, once again, I will support this, but we have to be so cautious as we move forward when we try to take a parcel of land out of the harvest, or out of our harvest. There has to be a cut put back in. If you're taking something away, you have to put it back in, and that's just my comments. So just so that we're aware of both sides of where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lamb. Any other comments to the motion on the floor, the amended motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Those opposed? Motion carries. Yes, Director Beamish.
I'd just like to inform the gallery, in case anybody thinks that we were having a separate meeting at lunchtime. We were receiving training on how to do our expenses. Okay. So it wasn't a separate meeting on issues, so thank you.
Yes, yeah, it wasn't a secretive closed door. It was very operational on how to. Okay, thank you for that, Director Beamish. Moving on, we have a couple of bylaws to look at. So we're going to start with bylaw number 11. So I'm going to start with the recommendation that the report titled 2019 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw be received. If I can have a mover for that, please. So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. Over to staff to bring forward, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. This is also a routine annual process for the Regional District where we bring forward a bylaw to borrow the funds to carry us operationally through until we receive our tax requisition in August. And if there's any specific questions, happy to.
Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. This has always been curious, or I've always been curious about this. Do we not have sufficient funds operationally to carry us forward from year to year before we receive our taxes? I know we have money in investments that are giving us a return. If that money is I guess, making us more of a return than we pay to borrow this? Otherwise, why don't we use that money rather than borrowing?
Over to staff, please.
Thank you. So I think I know the answer, but because I am not positive, it's really not appropriate for me to comment on something that the Chief Financial Officer would be more familiar with, and unfortunately she's away today. But if that's something that you'd like us to bring more information back on, we can do that. I would have to say that given that this is a routine occurrence for us, that there has been a cost-benefit analysis done in that regard.
And you have a follow-up? Okay,
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So I'll support this now, but yes, I'll bring forward a motion then to have that information brought forward. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions before we move on to the next part of this? Okay, seeing none. We're going to move that the Sunshine Coast Regional District 2019 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 720-2018 be given 3 readings and adopted. So moved Director Seegers, seconded Director McMahon. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so now we're at a bylaw which needs 3 readings.
1 second. I'd like to make another motion in support of having staff bring forward the benefit cost analysis of borrowing money versus using our own funds for operational expenditures in preliminary portion of the new year.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded, Director McMahon. And did you capture that, Sherry? Okay. Over to staff. Is the motion clear or any comment? Okay, thank you. I'll put it to directors. Do you have any questions or comments to the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we have a bylaw to read then. I haven't had to do a bylaw in a while. This is a bylaw to provide, bylaw number 720, a bylaw to provide for the borrowing of money, anticipation of revenue. Whereas it may be necessary for the Sunshine Coast Regional District to borrow money from time to time to meet current lawful expenditures, and whereas it is provided by Section 404 of the Local Government Act that the Regional District may, without the assent of the electors or the approval of the Inspector of Municipalities, provide for the borrowing of such sums of money as may be necessary to meet the current lawful expenditures of the Regional District, and whereas there are no liabilities outstanding under Section 404, now therefore the Board of the Sunshine Coast Regional District in open meeting assembled and acts as follows. Number 1, this bylaw may be cited for all purposes as Sunshine Coast Regional District 2019 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 720-2018. The Regional Board shall be and is hereby empowered and authorized to borrow upon the credit of the Sunshine Coast Regional District an amount or amounts not exceeding the sum of $8 million. The form of obligation to be given as acknowledgement of the liability shall be a promissory note or notes bearing the corporate seal of the Regional District and signed by the Chair and Chief Financial Officer. And 4, all anticipated revenue of the current year or so much thereof as may be necessary shall, when collected, be used to repay the money so borrowed. So read for a first time this 13th day of December 2018. So may I have a mover? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay. Read for a second time the 13th of December 2018. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. And read for a third time this 13th day of December 2018, bylaw number 720. So moved by Director Beamish, seconded Director Lamb. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. And adoption. So for adoption, all those in favor? Oh, pardon me. Sorry. May I move adoption? Thank you. And seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So passed bylaw number 720 and is adopted. Moving on, we have number 12 on our agenda is the Square Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant Security Issuing Bylaw number 719-2018. May I have someone move the recommendation that the report titled Square Bay Wastewater Treatment Facility Security Issuing be received? So moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Over to staff to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. In 2017, the SCRD received the approval of the electors through an alternative approval process to borrow funds for the SCRD share of the design and construction of the Square Bay wastewater treatment plant replacement. And as construction is nearing completion, we're now at the point where we require a security issuing bylaw so we can actually borrow the funds from the Municipal Finance Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, yes, Director McMahon, please.
I just had one question. I realize that this went into process before the review of the wastewater facilities that started this year, but my question is, who's paying for this? Is this the 93 parcels that are on this plant, or is it the general tax base in the SCRD?
And over to staff, please.
Thank you. This is a separate service area, so it's the 93 parcels that are serviced by this plant that will finance this project.
Any other questions from directors? Okay. Any other comments from staff? Okay. All right. Seeing none, I'd like to have someone move that the Sunshine Coast Regional District Security Issuing Bylaw 719-2018 be given 3 readings and adopted. Thank you. And seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. We're going to be reading some more. I know I don't have to read. Oh, okay. So Sunshine Coast Regional District, bylaw number 719, bylaw to authorize the entering into an agreement respecting financing between the Sunshine Coast Regional District and the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia. Whereas the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia, the authority, may provide financing of capital requirements for regional districts by the issue of debentures or other evidence of indebtedness of the authority and lending the proceeds therefrom to the regional district on whose request the financing is undertaken. And whereas under the provisions of Section 411 of the Local Government Act, the amount of borrowing authorized by the following loan authorization bylaw, the amount already borrowed under the authority thereof, the amount of authorization to borrow remaining thereunder, and the amount being issued under the authority thereof by this bylaw, and whereas the tables contained in this bylaw are to provide clarity and information for the purposes of this bylaw, and whereas the regional board by this bylaw hereby requests such financing be undertaken through the authority, now therefore the regional board of the Sunshine Coast Regional District in open meeting assembled enacts as follows. That's a lot of reading. The amounts here below by the loan authorization, and do I need to read all of this? No.
Thank you, Chair. Unless the board wants you to read it all.
I'm not hearing that from the table, the groans.
It would be sufficient just to use the
I know
citation
somebody's going to kick me soon over here. So, okay. So we're going to, may I have a mover to read this for the first time, this 13th day of December, 2018. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Read for a second time, this 13th day of December, 2018. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None, any opposed? Motion carries. Read a third time, this 13th day of December. So moved and seconded. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Those opposed? Motion carries. And move adoption this 13th day of December 2018. Sorry. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. This bylaw is now adopted. Thank you. Okay. So we've gotten to the end of our bylaws. So we're going to go on to directors' reports. And we're going to mix it up a little bit today, and we're going to go alphabetically. Director Beamish. If you'd like to start with your director's report, please. Thank you.
I will be brief. We are now moving into Town of Gibson's orientation, so that earlier this week we had a tour of the town and legal issues with our lawyer. and that's going to take place over the next few weeks as well, so that we're continuing to work. I have, on 2 occasions, turned the lights on for Christmas, so if anybody of Sechelt wants me to come down and turn some lights on, I know how to do it now. I'd be happy to do that for you. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank staff for their patience in helping us along to get this way, and to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you. And to the board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Director Hiltz, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to announce the alternate Area F Director is Doug Martinson, and Doug he's a Grantham's Landing resident and has taken his oath of office and is starting to join in and becoming on the onboarding process. So thank you for staff for helping with that. Couple events that we attended, the December 7th climate change. Thanks to the District of Sechelt for inviting that. It was a very informative meeting, and what I saw there was a lot of unity among the elected officials and staff that there is a problem before us, and that we need to strategically get together and address that. So thank you for that. It was a great event. There was the Bylaw 310 open house, which was at the Gibsons Community Center. Staff did an open house, and it was a good arrangement. There was 2 presentations and good discussions, and I think people really enjoyed having the 2 presentations. That's what I got from that. What else? It's winter, and it's raining. In West Howe Sound, it started on November 26th. We had a washout on Marine Drive leading into the town of Gibsons. We had about 200 meters of road flooded, debris off of the ditch. And then just this morning, there's been another washout at near the ferry on the bypass section leading onto the bypass from Langdale. So, yeah, water issues and drainage issues have resurfaced again, and we are in the rainy season. I think. Last little bit. The West Howe Sound Community Association held its annual general meeting, and we have 5 people from West Howe Sound are now directors, so the association is carrying on with its business for another year. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Director Hiltz. Over to Director Lamb, please.
I don't know what I've been doing for the last month. I guess council meetings and just the strategic planning that we've been going through, and obviously I'm with the District of Sechelt and the SCRD, and it's different in both camps, and they've got 2 different computer systems, which isn't one of my fortes. So, I was at the climate change gathering, and it was very good. It was really interesting to see some common goals come out of that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Lamb. Down to the other end of the table for Director Lee, please.
Thank you. It's been actually quite an interesting 3 weeks. I'm looking forward to I guess we could call it a Christmas break. There's not going to be any meetings scheduled for a while. Up in the Pender Harbor and Egmont area, we have light up the town, and we have a whole bunch of various events. Instead of me getting to light up the tree, I got to decorate the tree, though, so I'm going to have to tell them I need to light it next year. Sounds easier than putting them up. We're having a Christmas boat parade this Friday where we put lights on the boats and drive around the harbor. I'm going to put my boat in on the parade. I should be decorating it in the dark today. And I had attended several community meetings, the Chamber, and at the Rotary we had a very interesting presentation from the librarian in Sechelt. It was quite informative. It was received quite well by the people there. And I attended my first APC meeting, which I actually quite enjoyed. It was really well run, and they make sound decisions and make it clear to everybody. And there was two presentations at the meeting. which it's very, very nice to see the proponents come out and discuss it. And it was actually surprisingly non-confrontational when it was an amendment to a bylaw. And it was well received by both people, the decision. So it was a good experience, kind of enjoying myself. Anyways, Merry Christmas to everybody, and I guess hopefully we'll have a Happy New Year as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Over to Director McMahon, please.
Great. I also have been extremely busy. I went to the Area E APC, my first meeting. I went to the Bylaw 310 open house, which was great, and I attended my first library board meeting on Monday as the representative from the FCRD. I have some thank yous to pass around. Thank you to our MLA for meeting with us, the Block 1313 delegation, on Friday. That was a helpful, I think, and positive meeting. Thank you to Mayor Beamish, who met with the Elphinstone Community Association members about the traffic on Pratt Road and the Gospel Rock situation. The feedback that I got from that meeting was that the atmosphere was very positive. So that's what we like to see. I also should mention the healthcare evening that we had at the Gibsons Public Market with the Division of Family Practice. Our extremely busy doctors came out and took the time to consult us on what they think are the priorities in the community. So that was awesome of them. And of course, the Elphinstone Community Association held a potluck neighborhood party on November the 24th, and that was great. Lots of people out and talking to each other in a friendly fashion, which is what we want to see. And, you know, I've been to a bunch of other things too, but I think things are going forward quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I'd also like to point out that Director McMahon's alternate is in our audience today, Stephanie Grindon. So thank you very much for taking that on, and we're happy to have you join us today. Also, we do have alternate who is also a councillor in the town of Gibsons, David Kroll, here today as well. So thank you both for being here today. So next, going alphabetically, would be me. So I've had a lot to talk, but I've got a lot more to talk. So, so in this past couple of weeks, we've Directors Seegers and Beamish, in their roles as mayors of their respective municipalities, and I were on the local government talkback hosted by Sean Eckford. That was on December the 6th and is being rebroadcast on Eastlink Community TV. And that was a really interesting discussion, and that'll be a monthly feature on Eastlink, which is great. On December the 6th, during the day, I'd like to say a big thank you to staff. We had a tour as directors of the Field Road, so this facility, as well as our Mason Road facilities, and we did run out of cookies, but don't worry, I'll make more. But it was great to see and meet so many of our staff and have them welcome us into their space, because I know it was an intrusion into their workday, so it is very much appreciated, and it was a really good opportunity to actually get a feel for some of the facilities that we have here on the Sunshine Coast. So thank you very much, and it was very informative. I've also met with my chair of my Area B APC, as I was unable to attend the last APC meeting, and we've sat down and had a great discussion on issues that are coming forward in Area B, and just getting to know one another, so that was wonderful. Last Friday, on December the 7th, I sat down with our MLA, Nicholas Simons, as well, and discussed some of our provincial so some of our concerns, like District Lot 1313, Highway 101, as well as a lot of other MODI issues. So, so it was the start of a good conversation and ways that we can work together and hopefully advocate for what we need here on the Sunshine Coast. Next week, I'll be meeting with our Member of Parliament, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones. So if there's anything that you'd like me to bring up to her, please let me know, to the other directors. Also, my alternate was sworn in earlier this week. Her name is Lindsay Halls. She's a great member of the Half Moon Bay community, so I'm really excited that she said yes, and she took her oath earlier this week. And then something that's coming up this weekend on December the 15th, Breakfast with Santa that is being hosted by the Half Moon Bay Community Association at Half Moon Bay Elementary from 9:30 to 11:30. I'll be passing juice or something. They've asked me to serve so I can be front and center and meet everyone. But there'll be photos with Santa and breakfast with Santa.
Will we see yours?
What's that?
Will we see yours?
Maybe. I'll take a selfie with Santa, I promise. And then, yes, so I was also at the Division of Family Practitioners. That was a really informative discussion evening. And then also, it seems so long ago, but on November 30th, Directors Beamish and Seegers and I were over on Vancouver Island for an iced tea meeting, which is the Island Coastal Economic Trust, and all mayors and regional district chairs sit on that committee to promote economic development within their region and approve projects. And that was a really interesting discussion and a really energetic group across the island and the coast of a number of very new faces, as well as a few have been there for a while. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. We haven't had any washouts because of the rain, but I will say that the potholes on Highway 101 are certainly filling with water, so be careful out there. And with that, that's my report, so I'll pass it on to Director Seegers, please.
Thank you. So I'm not going to mention all of the things that we've all been doing in common. I got to light the lights in Sechelt. It's always an exciting time. Our Parks Department does an amazing job with the Rockwood Center and down Calvary Street, and we get all the little kids to come up front, and we do the countdown, and all these lights come on, and they're thrilled. And then we had the Festival of Lights, which is becoming quite an event in the community. We had about 40 vehicles, and these are the big vehicles like cement trucks and big backhoes and trailers and everything else. And they spend days decorating their vehicles and getting them out in this parade. We had a really good turnout. Council and I actually handed out candy canes. Note that they're very sticky. At the end, I had to wash my hands before I get in my car. One of the things that we're doing in Sechelt that is done in other communities around the province is we're alternating our acting mayor. We're rotating our acting mayor every month. And then the acting mayor actually chairs the committee the whole meeting. So Councillor Lamb, Director Lamb here, is the acting mayor this month. And so he chaired the meeting yesterday, did a great job. He brought in a great big gavel. It was fun. Things that are happening in Sechelt. We were presented with our preliminary budget yesterday, and the big package, and more information will be coming out in January, bringing that to the community. It looks like at this point, what staff have requested is a fairly hefty increase in taxes, so we'll have our work cut out for us with that. Trail Avenue is looking at being redesigned. The original proposal came back and was quite costly. When they went back to the company to potentially cut back on that, it wasn't actually going to save us much money. So we're looking at doing phase 1 and phase 2 together, and it will have separated bike lanes and separated walking trails to encourage on this major route in Sechelt to encourage biking and safe pedestrian and biking routes. What else? We set up our committees. So we have a number of committees that we've set up. We don't have the terms of reference set yet. We'll be doing those early in the new year. But we set up a housing advisory committee. As we all know, housing on the Sunshine Coast is an issue, and it's not just affordable housing. It's workplace housing, it's seniors housing, it's complex care, it's everything. So we've set up a housing advisory committee. It will be, we'll have a council representative on it, but we're looking at getting experts from the community, people who are interested in this, to come forward and work with us in the municipality to look at how we can create the environment, the processes, et cetera, that will actually allow these types of housings to move forward easily in our district. We've also set up an economic development advisory committee. Again, same thing. And for example, underneath that, we've set up a select committee for the airport. And we, in the district of Sechelt, most of our tax base comes from our residential properties. So we need to maximize industrial and business tax revenues. And we have industrial land at the airport. We have people coming forward actually who want to use that land, but we're not set up for that. We don't have the lots determined, et cetera. So our airport advisory committee will be tasked with how do we maximize revenues out of that airport, whatever that looks like. Again, we're going to be looking out to the community. There are a number of people in the community with a lot of expertise. We're looking to bring those forward with that. Another one is the Harbour Expansion and Development Select Committee. As you know, we have a derelict boat issue in Porpoise Bay. So one of the things that the community wants to look at is setting up a Harbour Advisory Committee. We don't know what that looks like. We know Gibson's has one. There's Pender Harbour has one. There's a number of them around there, around the community, and other places. We don't know what the cost will be, what we'll be able to do with that. So this committee will actually look at that and be able to advise council, is this something that we want to do or not? There's also going to be some potential expansion on the Trail Bay side with our Sechelt neighbors. They're looking at expanding their marina down the road. So there's some work to be done on that side as well. So the harbor is not just the Porpoise Bay, but the outside as well. Downtown Revitalization Select Committee. Our downtown, we are talking about some redevelopment down there. We have developers who are coming forward with ideas. We want to, again, put a structure in place to make sure that what comes forward is in keeping with what the community wants and that it's got kind of a cohesive feel to it. Because one of the things that we typically see in that area is that when development comes forward, it's always piecemeal. We want to make sure we've got kind of a look and feel to that. So those are some of them. One more, Water Resources Select Committee. We have water that comes from our Water Resource Center that could be reused. And we have businesses in the community who want to use it. So that's one thing. We want to look at that. We also want to look at supporting what's happening at the regional district in ensuring that in Sechelt we are doing everything we can around the water issue. So it's going to be more than just the Water Resource Center. Again, terms of reference for all these will be set up in the new year, and then we'll be going out to the community for people to come forward and work with us on these committees. So I think that's, I have a meeting with Pamela Goldsmith-Jones next week too, so we'll have to compare notes after that.
Excellent.
One further one, smoking control bylaw was passed, adopted in Sechelt. So that means that we've given some teeth to our bylaw officers to be able to enforce that. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on to Director Tighe, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I have a few items to report as well. It's been a while since we've done the director's reports, so going back to November 28th, we had the OCPC elections, and I'm happy to report that we've got a full contingent of 11 members in the OCP committee. And we also had a great social evening hosted by one of the members, Jamie Davidson, and where we got to know each other a little bit better, so that was very nice. Then in the last little bit, I also sent out a newsletter, my first newsletter at the beginning of the month. If you want to be part of that newsletter, do go visit my website, andreastighs.com, and you can go sign up for it there. If you're a director, you're getting it whether you like it or not. If you don't want it, let me know. In the last little while, there was also the Voice on the Coast relaunch that Laurie Pratt and I attend it, and that's a really nice initiative for young people, supported by Scredo, to get their voices heard as to what's needed for them to be on the coast and stay on the coast. I also wished Florence Fielding a happy 90th birthday. She's a member of the community, and I've wished that to her on the behalf of the SDRD, so I thought I'd at least mention it here. And also the citizens of Roberts Creek. And then I also got to tour Largo Road, that development that's going in there. And we've had a lot of concern from the citizens around that area about the through road that's going to be put through, and therefore I also had a discussion with Moti about Largo Road, and they are going to be sending a letter to everybody that's concerned about their rationale and how they're going to move forward. And they think that the concerns that the citizens raised will be addressed by their implementation measures. I'm not going to get into detail on those, but I just mentioned to them that maybe we'll have to revisit that in a couple of years when the road is actually in, and we'll have the proof in the pudding. I will also be meeting with some Largo Road residents tomorrow regarding that road. I also had a meeting with Nicholas Simons, and my focus was in reiterating the need for a land use plan for the Chapman area, as well as the participation of Moti in the regional growth strategy when we do get to that point. And he was quite receptive to both of those. And I also mentioned Largo Road to him, which was news to him. So that was a good fill-in on that one. There was a great Bylaw 310 workshop in Seashelt. Most of you guys went to the one in Gibsons, but I went to the one in Seashelt, and that was also great and very informative. So thank you for putting that on. And what else was there? Okay, and then thank you to the District of Seashelt for the climate change workshop. That was very informative, and it's great to see that collaboration between all the municipalities in the district. And last but not least, thank you to all the staff and all the directors for the continued support, and also the tour of the facilities on Mahon Road and here as well. So that was great, and that concludes it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ties. Okay, so that's it for our director's reports. The next item on our agenda is new business, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Ties to bring forward what he'd like to bring forward under new business.
Thank you. And yes, we've heard a lot about District Lot 1313 today, and it is certainly a very important issue at this point in time, and there's a lot of there's some potential threat to property, and as well as and flooding and all those things. And I just want to kind of broaden the scope a little bit on the focus, not to detract from what District Lot 1313 is, but to make sure that when that conversation happens with the minister, that we also look at the bigger picture, and that we get a land use plan for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit in place, so that we can finally kind of put the war to rest. We keep fighting battles, but we're not winning the war. So I just want to see that maybe we should get a land use plan in place, and so when we have the opportunity to talk to the minister in person, that we actually see that we can lay the war to rest and get a land use plan in place. And so my recommendation for the board's consideration is that the SCRD requests the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development to defer plans for timber harvesting of BC Timber Sales Cut Block A93884 Clack Creek, which is in the proposed Elphinstone Park, according to our OCP in Roberts Creek, bylaw 641. Until a land use plan for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit is in place as per their July 2018 expression of interest in exploring options with the SCRD for a plan for the Mount Elphinstone area within the Chapman Landscape Unit. So that is my recommendation.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that motion? So seconded by Director McMahon. Do you have that down? Would any of the directors like that read back to them before we start debate? Everyone's clear on the motion on the floor? Okay, so we'll start the discussion. Who would like, Director Ties, as it's your motion, do you feel that you've motivated it enough to allow a speaker's list, or would you like to speak to it further before I move on to someone else?
No, I'd like to open the floor at this point.
Okay, perfect. So I have Director Seekers.
Thank you. So the way I hear the motion is that it's pretty much open-ended. So we want them to wait until we have a land use plan for this area in place. What if we didn't do anything? What's the time frame that we're looking at inside of this? I'd like to see some kind of time frame set out so that we may not meet that, but at least we have a deadline by when we're moving something forward. That gives them some guidance on their end and on our end for staff as well.
Okay, I have you, Director Ties. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as well? Director Hiltz and Director McMahon. Don't worry, I have you still on the list. So we'll go to Director Hiltz first.
Yeah, I'm just kind of interested in what you're expecting the chair to do. I think I'm not quite clear. Writing a letter, talking on the phone, what the approach?
And Director McMahon.
Yes, I believe the landscape unit planning process is not ours. It belongs to FLNRO. So it would actually be helpful to have a little more clarity about that, but I think we can still make the motion work for right now.
And Director Ties?
Yeah, so in response to those two questions, I would say that for timing, as Director McMahon has mentioned, it is on the province to actually kick this off. And really the intention of this motion is to get some urgency behind that and to move it back up in their priority list. It was at fairly close to the top at some point, and there was even some funds set aside. And then I heard from Nicholas Simons that those funds disappeared again and things went down in the priority list. So I just want to use this motion to kind of hopefully get this back up into the awareness of the minister so that we can get this land use plan in place. As to us giving a time frame, I don't think it's appropriate because it's their process. As to phone or letter, I think it would be nice for the chair to include that in the communication and hopefully the face-to-face communication when in January when that does happen. That being said, there is some urgency to Clack Creek as well. Apparently it was slated to be on the auction block for the third quarter of 2018, which means that it would be great if it got mentioned in the phone call as well that she would be conducting with District Law 1313.
Director Lamb?
Okay, I'm still trying to sort this out a little bit, but I think it would be good use to get a land use plan in place. Oh boy. One of the things I find, and as I'm watching as we're moving along, there's legal challenges, there's resources that are used up to change the way we're doing things, or change cutting boundaries or whatever it is, and if we could get by that, maybe we could go harvest and we could make some money, so there would be some money in place, so we could exactly what Andreas Ties here is saying, that all of a sudden there's no money, so where does the money come from? It comes from our natural resources and from people going to work. The harvest of our timber is not done on a let's get up in the morning and go cut some trees down. There's a lot of expertise put into it before they do move ahead. So I'd like to see us get on a land use plan, and so that we can harvest and keep people happy, and make sure that we can enjoy our forests, and that we move ahead. Thank you.
Director Beamish.
I was just trying to look up and see if I could find the resolution that we actually passed on this before, when ELF was at the table a couple weeks ago. Did anybody recall that resolution? It sounds similar. That's all I'm thinking. The one we previously passed. Do we have a copy? No, we have a copy here. Is that the SCRD write to the Minister of Lands, Forests, Natural Resources, Operation of Rural Development, requesting that, absent further provincial land use planning from Elphinstone, the sale of cut block A93884 be halted, and that past correspondence opposing this harvesting be included in the letter. So, are we significantly different from that resolution?
Director Ties, I'll go to you first as you crafted this.
Yeah, to be honest, there is not much of a difference. The only thing was that in my conversation with Nicholas Simons, he mentioned that Clack Creek it looked like it was going ahead. And that means that essentially the letter that we sent was, for all intents and purposes, ignored, and therefore I just wanted to reiterate that we wanted to keep that conversation open and make sure that due process is served when we're going to somebody like the minister, and that is also mentioned to the minister rather than just being somewhere in staff land.
Does that answer your question?
I suppose it does, but we did write to the minister in that case, sort of thing. So I just substantially the same.
Yes, please. Sherry.
That the SCRD requests the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development defer plans for timber harvesting of BC Timber Sales Cut Block A93884 Clack Creek until a land use plan for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit is in place, as per their July 2018 expression of interest in exploring options with the SCRD for a plan for the Mount Elphinstone area within the Chapman Landscape Unit.
Director Seekers.
Thank you. What direction should we give staff to follow up on this then? Or it's just saying we're requesting that they wait until we have this land use plan in place. Would we like staff to contact them to follow up on their expression of interest or whatever you've identified in this motion? I'm just trying to have something actionable out of this so that we can move something forward besides the directors talking to the minister.
Director Ties.
Yeah, as to something actionable for staff, I think at this point, unless staff has some ideas as to what could be done, I just wanted to make sure that Clack Creek was also included in the conversation with the minister. That's my chief intention in this motion.
I'm going to look over to staff for comment, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So following up on the suggestion, staff can, if the board would like, staff can actually make contact with the staff that are actually, as far as we know, leading this initiative and get a status update. We haven't had a status update on this in a while, so that is something that we could do.
And the motion that we have on the table, that would be sufficient for you as well? Or would you like us to make an amendment to it?
Staff would recommend that there would be another and staff contact the provincial staff to receive a status update and bring it back to the board as timely as possible.
Director Ties, would you like to make that amendment as I hear it being typed in over here?
Yes, I would like to make that amendment.
We'll just read back it just before it is seconded, just so for.
And that staff contact provincial staff at the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development for a status update on the plans for the Mount Elphinstone Chapman Landscape Unit Plan.
Okay. And that captures, okay, and seconded by Director Seegers. Any discussion on the amendment on the floor? Director McMahon.
I think this works for me, because then when we come back after Christmas, hopefully there'll be a staff update, and then there'll be an update from the chair as well, and then we can move from there.
Terrific. Any other questions or comments on the amendment on the floor? Okay. So I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Okay. The amendment carries. And then we have an amended motion on the floor. Is there any more debate on the amended motion on the floor? Would you like it read out in the entirety? There's too many T's there. Is everybody clear on the amended motion on the floor? Director Lamb?
No, I'm just wondering, am I allowed to make a comment as to why I...
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, because I believe that we have to, we have to plan as we're moving ahead how we're going to harvest our, how we're going to use our lands, and how we're going to harvest. So right now we're looking at stopping if this cut block does come up in this year and we stop the harvest of that. People are counting on, work from day to day or month to month, or however that is. So if we're going to take this cut block out, then we have to there has to be something given from someplace else. So that's why I'm voting against it, that I really would like to see a land use plan move ahead so that we know where we're going, so that the people in this community can know that they're going to be working from day to day, or that they can, as in most logging families, or they have a 10-month period where they can work. So they it's just hopefully giving security to families that work in that industry. And it's when the people work in that industry, it's not just that industry, it's the guy that works in the grocery store, because everybody buys food, they buy gas. So that's why I vote against it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Seegers?
Thank you. One of the documents, I believe, that I read here recently, I don't remember, somewhere I read one of the agenda packages recently, and it said 19% of our economic development or economic income on the coast comes directly from forestry. So it does have an impact, okay? And I would like to hear the motion back once more, please. Thank you.
Please, Sherry.
In its entirety with the amendment
Yes, please.
that the SCRD request the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development defer plans for timber harvesting of BC Timber Sales Cut Block A93884 Clack Creek until a land use plan for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit is in place as per their July 2018 expression of interest in exploring options with the SCRD for a plan for the Mount Elphinstone area within the Chapman Landscape Unit, and that SCRD staff contact provincial staff at the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development for a status update on the land use plans for the Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit plan.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Director Hiltz.
What I hear Director Lamb saying is it sounds like he's trying to express that the benefit of a land use plan is that there's an economic aspect to this, and I think that's what he's trying to express somehow in the motion, so that if the SCRD can express the reason for the land use plan is there is an economic component to that. Is there something somewhere in the motion that could satisfy those interests?
Director Lamb.
Yeah, for myself, like that's exactly what it is. It's you know, you have to give security to the people in our community, and so I think this is very important. I mean, if we could somehow get a big wand out and say, okay, bingo, you know, January 15th, we've got a land use plan, and these two cut blocks and these creeks are saved. I shouldn't say saved, but they're put aside, but I mean, that would be awesome, because then the people are going to know, okay, we're not going to harvest here, we're going to be harvesting over here, and that'll be great. And one of the things about this Elphinstone area is it is one of the best growing areas there is in the province. You know, you plant trees there, you know, 10 years later you see them. You know you've planted trees. So you know, like that's my big drawback to this whole thing, is how do we get a land use plan out there as soon as possible so that we can, you know, once again give security to the members in our community. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the motion, on the amended motion on the floor? If this motion does pass, we will make sure it's very, very clear on the importance of moving very quickly on this, because we have been held in limbo on the land use plan. Director Beamish?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little conflicted in this too. I believe this is very distinctly different from Lot 1313, which has a different history to it. And I do believe that we have asked for this in the previous motion that was made. And I'd be much more comfortable and with a motion to asking staff to follow up, as well as asking the chair to place it on the agenda for a meeting with the minister as a second item to follow up on, as opposed to going back and keeping to beating the horse and saying, stop it, stop it, stop it, and nothing happening, sort of thing. So I really think the follow-up needs to be maybe more direct now with the staff follow-up on our previous resolution, and the chair and Director McMahon following up with a meeting with the minister. So I'm just not sure the message it sends to keep sending the same message, same resolution sort of thing forward. So I would not be in favor of this particular resolution this time.
Are you interested in proposing an amendment to it, or just, or?
I guess I'm comfortable with the second half of the resolution and of asking the staff to follow up, and but I'm not sure whether we can do that without defeating the first part of the resolution, or how that should be dealt with. So.
Okay, well, it's up to the will of the board on how we proceed on this. Director Seegers?
I'd say call the question, and then this motion will either pass or not, and we can propose something different.
We can propose. So, okay. So is there any other commentary or discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay, so we are going to call the question on the amended motion as most recently read. Does anyone need it read again, or are we all, everyone understands what they are voting on? Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. Those opposed? Okay, so the motion is defeated. I will, as I heard in discussion, there was the potential of a possibility of just bringing forward the second half of the motion. I'm going to look to Director Beamish, as that came from you. Would you like to propose that second part of the motion?
Well, with the agreement with Director Tyers, I would propose that staff be directed to follow up on the previous motion that I forget what I think that's the November 15th motion on this issue, and that the chair be asked to raise this additionally with the minister as a separate item when they meet with the minister on District Lot 1313 and ask for status and what is happening in terms of a land use planning for this area, and express the urgency of our needing to know the future of this area for the purpose of economic development and the welfare of the workers.
May I have a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Director Ties. And I'll go to Director Ties to open debate.
Yeah, I like, I'm actually, that's a good idea by Director Beamish, and I'm just a little bit puzzled by Director Lamb opposing, saying that we need a land use plan, but then opposing the motion to actually push to get one underway. So that's a little bit puzzling to me. I am fully aware that a land use plan does mean that every side will have to make concessions, and that really Clack Creek right now is a tool to put some urgency in the ministry to get something done. It does not mean that Clack Creek will never be logged or anything anywhere on Elphinstone. We just want, this is just one of the tools that we have to actually put some urgency in the ministry. And so I think that to have a land use plan, we need to have some sort of leverage to work with. Otherwise, it's only the greasy wheel, only the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. So we need to kind of just put some urgency out there. But I am in favor of the amendment that Director Beamish has put forth. So,
Sherry, could I have you read that back if you've got it, please?
That SCRD staff contact provincial staff at the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development for a status update on the land use plans for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit Plan, and that the chair raise the issue to defer plans for timber harvesting of BC Timber Sales Cut Block A93884 Clack Creek until a land use plan for the Mount Elphinstone portion of the Chapman Landscape Unit is in place during the meeting with the Minister of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development being scheduled in the new year.
Does staff have any questions on that before I go back to directors? Okay, good. Okay. To the board, any further questions or discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any in-camera items today, so I'm going to, we'll go call for adjournment, and then we'll take questions from our media and public. So may I have a motion to adjourn? You were as fast as I was today. And a seconder, please. All those in favor? Okay. We are adjourned. So question.